Victoria Sterling was known in SoHo simply as a successful gallery owner. At 45, an art expert trusted by wealthy collectors, nobody knew she'd worked 20 years in the FBI art crime team, until that day when a painting brought to her gallery revealed something she never expected. But before we dive into this incredible story, if you're new here, welcome to The Last Witness. We share the most amazing untold stories of ordinary people with extraordinary secrets, stories where someone becomes the final witness to incredible events. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our latest stories. And if you enjoy this story, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps us continue bringing you these incredible tales. Now, let's get back to Victoria's story. Victoria Sterling had been running Sterling Fine Arts in New York's SoHo district for 8 years, establishing herself as one of the most respected art dealers in the city's competitive gallery scene. At 45, with an impeccable eye for quality and authenticity, Victoria had built a client base of serious collectors, museums, and investors who trusted her expertise in European and American fine art. What her clients and competitors didn't know was that Victoria's exceptional ability to spot forgeries, trace provenance, and identify stolen artworks came from 20 years of service with the FBI's art crime team, where she had been one of the Bureau's most successful investigators, specializing in art theft, fraud, and forgery cases. Victoria's FBI career had involved tracking down stolen masterpieces, infiltrating international art smuggling rings, and working with museums and law enforcement agencies around the world to recover cultural treasures worth hundreds of millions of dollars. She'd developed expertise in authentication techniques, forensic art analysis, and the complex international networks that facilitated the trade in stolen and forged artworks. Victoria's specialty within the art crime team had been understanding how sophisticated forgery operations worked, the techniques used by master forgers, the methods criminals used to create false provenance documentation, and the networks of corrupt dealers, auction houses, and collectors who knowingly participated in the illegal art trade. Victoria's FBI career had ended in 2015 when budget cuts eliminated her position along with several others in the art crime team. Despite her exceptional success rate and specialized expertise, Victoria faced the choice between accepting a transfer to a different division or taking early retirement with a reduced pension. Victoria chose retirement and decided to use her art expertise to build a legitimate business in the field she'd spent 2 decades protecting from criminals. The transition from federal law enforcement to private art dealing had been challenging, but ultimately rewarding. Victoria's knowledge of authentication, provenance research, and market dynamics made her exceptionally qualified to advise collectors and evaluate artworks. More importantly, her FBI background gave her credibility with clients who valued working with someone who understood the legal and ethical complexities of art collecting. Victoria approached art dealing with the same methodical attention to detail that had characterized her FBI work. Every artwork that entered her gallery was thoroughly researched, documented, and authenticated. Victoria maintained extensive databases of stolen art, consulted with international law enforcement agencies, and refused to handle any piece that couldn't be conclusively verified as legally owned. Victoria's scholarly approach to art dealing had earned her recognition in the art world and attracted clients who appreciated her commitment to authenticity and legal compliance. Her gallery specialized in works by established artists with clear provenance, and she developed relationships with estate lawyers, museum curators, and private collectors who needed expert evaluation services. But Victoria's FBI training also made her naturally suspicious of artworks with questionable backgrounds, unusual pricing, or clients who seemed evasive about how they had acquired valuable pieces. Her law enforcement instincts remained sharp, and she continued to spot red flags that indicated potential involvement in art crimes. Most of the time, these concerns were minor issues that could be resolved through additional research or documentation. The art world was full of complex ownership histories, family disputes, and bureaucratic complications that could make legitimate transactions appear suspicious to outsider observers. Victoria had never encountered a case that triggered her full FBI training or suggested involvement in major art crimes. That changed on a Tuesday morning in November 2023, when a new client brought her a painting that immediately set off every alarm bell she'd developed during her law enforcement career. The client, who introduced himself as Jonathan Reeves, was a well-dressed man in his 50s who claimed to represent a private collector interested in selling a small but valuable painting from his collection. Reeves explained that his client preferred to remain anonymous, but was willing to provide all necessary documentation for authenticity and provenance. The painting Reeves showed Victoria was a beautiful work attributed to Jean-Baptiste Camille Corot, the 19th-century French landscape painter. The piece appeared to be authentic, with the right materials, aging patterns, and artistic techniques consistent with Corot's known works from the 1850s. but Victoria's expert examination revealed several details that troubled her. The painting's frame was period appropriate, but showed signs of having been removed and remounted relatively recently. More concerning, the canvas had small holes near the edges that suggested it had been cut from a larger mounting or removed hastily from its original frame. Victoria also noticed that the painting's surface showed cleaning patterns that were inconsistent with normal conservation work. Someone had cleaned specific areas of the painting while leaving others untouched, suggesting an attempt to remove or obscure identifying marks rather than preserve the artwork. Victoria's FBI training kicked in. A valuable painting with signs of recent frame changes and selective cleaning could indicate that it had been stolen and altered to disguise its original appearance or remove identifying marks that would connect it to theft reports. "Mr. Reeves," Victoria said carefully, "I'll need to see complete provenance documentation before I can consider representing this piece. The painting appears authentic, but I have some concerns about its recent history." Reeves provided a folder containing what appeared to be legitimate ownership documents, insurance records, and authenticity certificates dating back several decades. The paperwork suggested that the painting had been in a private Swiss collection since the 1960s and had recently been inherited by Reeves's client following the collector's death. Victoria spent the next several days researching the Corot painting and verifying the documentation Reeves had provided. What she discovered was deeply troubling. The ownership documents were sophisticated forgeries that had been created using authentic paper from the appropriate time periods and reproduction letterheads from legitimate art institutions. Someone had invested considerable time and expertise in creating a false provenance for the painting. More concerning was Victoria's discovery that a Corot painting matching the exact description of Reeves's piece had been reported stolen from a private collection in France in 2019. Victoria realized that she was looking at a stolen masterpiece that had been altered and provided with forged documentation to disguise its true identity and ownership history. But Victoria's investigation also revealed something even more alarming. The sophisticated forgery techniques used in the false provenance documents were identical to methods used in several other high-profile art fraud cases that Victoria had investigated during her FBI career. The document forgeries showed the same distinctive aging techniques, paper sources, and handwriting analysis patterns that Victoria recognized from a major art fraud ring that the FBI had been tracking for over a decade without successfully identifying the organization's leadership. Victoria realized that Reeves wasn't just trying to sell a single stolen painting. He was part of a sophisticated international art crime network that specialized in stealing valuable artworks and creating elaborate false histories to legitimize their sale. Victoria faced a complex decision about how to proceed. If she confronted Reeves directly about the stolen painting, she could compromise any ongoing FBI investigation and potentially allow other criminals in the network to escape. But if she allowed the transaction to proceed, she would be facilitating the sale of stolen property. Victoria decided to contact the FBI's art crime team and report her discovery. Special Agent David Chen met with Victoria at her gallery after hours. Agent Chen had taken over many of Victoria's old cases when she retired and was familiar with her expertise and track record. "Victoria," Agent Chen said after examining the Corot painting, "this is definitely the piece that was stolen from the Dubois collection in Lyon. But more importantly, you're right about the document forgeries. We've been seeing this same signature pattern in art fraud cases across 3 continents." Agent Chen explained that the FBI had been tracking what appeared to be a major international art crime organization that specialized in high-end theft and forgery. The organization was sophisticated enough to steal valuable artworks, alter them to avoid detection, and create convincing false provenance documentation that allowed them to sell stolen pieces through legitimate dealers and auction houses. "We've never been able to identify the organization's leadership or understand how they coordinate operations across multiple countries," Agent Chen continued. "Your connection to this network could be the breakthrough we've been looking for." Agent Chen asked Victoria to cooperate with an FBI operation to trace the art crime network through Reeves and his associates. Victoria would continue discussions about purchasing the Corot painting while FBI agents monitored the negotiations and gathered intelligence about the criminal organization. Victoria agreed to help the investigation while maintaining her normal gallery operations. Over the next month, she worked with federal agents to document Reeves's activities and identify other members of the art crime network. The investigation revealed that the organization was far more extensive and sophisticated than the FBI had suspected. The network included art thieves operating in Europe, document forgers in Asia, corrupt gallery owners in major art markets, and wealthy collectors who knowingly purchased stolen artworks at significantly reduced prices. Victoria's expertise in art authentication and her knowledge of the criminal methods used in art fraud were crucial for understanding how the organization operated and identifying which other artworks in circulation might be connected to their activities. The investigation led to coordinated arrests in 12 countries and the recovery of over 200 stolen artworks worth an estimated $400 million. The operation dismantled what international law enforcement agencies determined was one of the largest art crime networks in history. Agent Chen called Victoria after the conclusion of the investigation to thank her for her contribution. "Victoria, your decision to investigate the suspicious painting and contact us led to the recovery of hundreds of stolen artworks and the arrest of criminals who had been operating successfully for over 15 years.
Your expertise was essential for understanding their methods and tracking their activities. Victoria felt the same sense of satisfaction she remembered from her FBI career. Her specialized knowledge had once again been used to protect the art world from criminals who exploited the legitimate art market for illegal profit. Victoria continued operating Sterling Fine Arts, but she also began working more closely with law enforcement agencies, insurance companies, and museums to identify and recover stolen artworks. Her experience with the International Art Crime Network had demonstrated the ongoing need for expert analysis in detecting and preventing art fraud. Victoria also established relationships with other gallery owners and dealers, helping to create informal networks for sharing information about suspicious artworks and questionable clients. Her FBI background made her valuable for educating other art professionals about red flags that might indicate involvement in art crimes. But Victoria's most important realization was that her commitment to protecting cultural heritage hadn't ended when her FBI career ended. The same dedication to preserving and protecting artworks continued in her civilian career, just through different methods and in a different context. On quiet evenings in her SoHo gallery, surrounded by carefully authenticated artworks and the sophisticated security systems that protected them, Victoria often reflected on how her career transition from FBI agent to gallery owner had evolved into a different form of cultural protection. The skills she'd learned during 20 years of investigating art crimes continued to serve the broader art community's interests, just through private business rather than official law enforcement, and through education and consultation rather than arrests and prosecutions. Victoria had learned that the most important protection of cultural treasures often came not from official law enforcement operations, but from knowledgeable individuals who remained vigilant about art crimes and willing to use their expertise when they encountered suspicious activities. The last witness to her FBI career had become the first line of defense against those who would exploit the legitimate art market for criminal purposes. It wasn't the law enforcement career Victoria had planned to continue after budget cuts, but it was the service the art world needed her to provide, and that, she'd learned, was more than enough purpose for any art crime investigator, whether working for the FBI or operating a gallery in New York's most prestigious art district. During busy gallery openings, as Victoria discussed artworks with collectors and enthusiasts who shared her passion for cultural heritage, she sometimes allowed herself to appreciate the trust that clients placed in her expertise and integrity. Victoria's gallery had become a place where art lovers could acquire beautiful works with confidence, knowing that someone with professional training was ensuring that every piece had been legally acquired and properly authenticated. Victoria smiled as she prepared for another day of serving clients and evaluating artworks, knowing that her FBI-trained eyes would continue watching for the subtle signs that indicated stolen or forged pieces, ensuring that her gallery remained a beacon of legitimacy in an art world that sometimes attracted those who would exploit beauty for illegal profit. The SoHo gallery had become an unlikely venue for continuing the fight against art crimes, but Victoria had learned that protection of cultural heritage required vigilance in all contexts where valuable artworks changed hands. In the end, Victoria's mission remained the same as it had been during her FBI career, protecting cultural treasures from those who would steal, forge, or exploit them, and ensuring that legitimate art lovers could enjoy authentic works without unknowingly supporting criminal enterprises. The venue had changed from federal offices to a Manhattan gallery, but the commitment to preserving cultural heritage remained as strong as ever. Thank you for listening to this incredible story here on The Last Witness. If you enjoyed Victoria's journey from FBI art crime investigator to gallery owner to undercover informant and want to hear more amazing tales of ordinary people who become the final witnesses to extraordinary events, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue bringing you these untold stories that deserve to be heard. What did you think about Victoria's decision to help the FBI investigation rather than simply refusing to handle the suspicious painting? Do you believe art dealers have special responsibilities to combat art crimes? Let us know in the comments below. We love hearing your thoughts on these stories. And remember, sometimes the most important protection of cultural treasures happens not in museums or government agencies, but in the everyday places where trained professionals refuse to ignore the warning signs around them. Until next time, keep listening and keep witnessing the truth.